Good evening and welcome to CUHK Law's latest seminar in our CLINDS LegalTech seminar series. My name is Stephen Gallagher and it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker to you tonight. Before I do so, please remember that I'm hoping that our speaker will leave some time at the end of the seminar for some questions. So please feel free to send in your questions, chat them into me. Make them as difficult as possible because we have an expert speaker tonight and I know he will enjoy a challenging question. And I can see that we have some participants with us tonight who are experts in artificial intelligence. So it'll be good to get some difficult questions for them for our speaker to answer later. So let me just introduce our speaker to you. I shouldn't really need to have to introduce him to you. First of all, obviously, he is a very popular speaker with the faculty. We've got over 900, I think, people signed up to tonight's seminar. A great topic and a great speaker. Our speaker is Professor Lutz-Christian Wolff, who is, of course, the Dean of CUHK Law. Professor Wolff was a founding member of CUHK Law and has also acted in many different administrative capacities within the faculty and, of course, for the university as well, where he was Dean of the CUHK Graduate School as well. He has studied, worked and conducted research in a number of jurisdictions, including mainland China, Taiwan and the USA, and he is admitted to practice in England and Wales and in Germany. Professor Wolff specialises in international and Chinese business law, comparative law and private international law. He has published widely and is frequently invited speaker at international conferences, knowledge transfer events and professional trainings, and of course he regularly speaks in our seminar series on various matters ranging from, as tonight, technology, through legal education and, of course, into legal history as well. So let me hand you over now to Professor Wolff. Over to you, Lutz.
Thank you, Steve. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining this CLINDS seminar. Great to see you all. Allow me to share my slides first. Here we are. All right. First of all, let me start by giving a bit of background to this seminar. There's hardly at the moment any week or any day actually when the Financial Times or other major newspapers have news, have articles, have comments on AI and other technologies. And most of these articles and comments are critical or they are even negative. And this got me thinking. If technologies are in fact so fast, so precise, so consistent, so efficient, then why should humans not use these technologies? And why should we as lawyers not use these technologies to do legal work? Why not using AI for legal work? And I started to dig into the literature and my findings got published in an article that appeared in the Journal of Law and Technology at Texas. And this seminar is based on this article. I will give you the quote later. I wish to acknowledge research work conducted for this project by Mr. Todd Zhang, who is currently a JD student here at CUHK Law. And of course, I also wish to thank all the colleagues here from the CUHK Law Center for Legal Innovation and Digital Society for a lot of inspiring work and for a lot of interesting discussions and talks and presentations. One last thought before I start. Colleagues informed me about the registration number for this seminar. Professor Gallagher just mentioned it. I think we have around 900. And that got me a bit worried, I must admit. And then Professor Gallagher, in his usual way, told me before the seminar that many colleagues are already preparing killer questions for me during the Q&A session that got me even more worried. And then I looked at the title of the seminar again and I thought, well, why? This is probably a little bit provocative. On the other hand, I believe that if we want to move things forward, we need to think out of the box and to provide the basis for such out-of-box discussion thinking. It's sometimes helpful, actually often helpful to come up with some provocative ideas. And therefore, the title was provocative, and this talk will be a little bit provocative for that very purpose, to move things forward. Let me start by reminding ourselves of some basics to set the scene for this seminars, because I know many who are attending are not just AI experts. These concepts are important to create a terminological and doctrinal basis for the discussion today. Algorithms first, a series of instructions that are followed step by step to do something useful or solve a problem. Algorithms are like recipes, for example, to bake cookies. You follow the instructions and the cookies come out. Algorithms are also used, for example, for search functions. You ask the search question, and the algorithm then step by step develops the results. And by the way, legal rules that adopt the conditional approach, if then also entail algorithm, because it's also a step-by-step way of finding the legal outcome. Algorithms are based on automation. That's clear. The work process does not require additional input. Once started, the result will be automatically generated. And then we have artificial intelligence, on which I focus today, of course, which is based on algorithms and on automation. AI, that's machines and software which simulate human behavior and intelligence and engage in an independent learning process to develop itself further without the need of additional instructions. And that's the important thing, the good thing, and also the scary thing. Like a human being which develops knowledge and skills from the time of birth, AI does the same. Once started, it develops itself further and further and further. I'm focusing on AI today, but there are, of course, lots of other technologies, and there's more to come. Let's assume that AI stands for all of them, because I will take a more general approach. I also would like to mention that anybody who wants to learn more about those basics, I can highly recommend this book, written by nobody else but the chair today, Professor Steve Gallagher. It's a great introduction to what we are discussing today, and it adds many other aspects, legal tech and in general, and then IP law, cryptocurrencies, digital assets, blockchain and the law, and. So if you want to get a basic understanding about all those different features, this is the book to go for. The title of my work today relates to legal work, and I wish this to cover everything: lawyering, including drafting, of course, structuring, advocacy, due diligence, everything, including also dispute settlement in the various forms, legislation, law enforcement, crime prevention, legal education, everything you can think of. Now, for the purpose of my talk, I think it's important to distinguish between two questions. First, can we delegate legal work, all legal work, to machines? And the other question is, should we delegate legal work to machines? And I think we need to distinguish here, because different features are involved. In relation to the first question, we can, I think, acknowledge that a lot can already be done by legal technologies, including AI, from research, of course, to knowledge management, to document analysis and design, to automation of legal decision-making, sentencing, and so on. And yet, AI and other technologies are still seen as being weak, in the sense that they only perform and only can perform assistant and advisory roles, and that, of course, they are prone to errors. And we read about these errors, to which I will get in a minute, every day. In fact, many people, as you can see from the first quote, many people argue that technologies are not able to completely replace human lawyers, which is certainly true for now. And they also argue that technologies will never be able to replace human lawyers. When information technology has been applied to deeper legal process, the result has not been very successful. This is especially so in relation to the application of AI systems to law, a quote from 2016. I'm not able to assess, I'm not a computer scientist, I'm not able to assess that whether the future prediction is correct. But what we need to acknowledge, I believe, is that many AI experts take a different view. You have a quote here from 2016. Combined results from surveys of artificial intelligence experts estimate a 50% chance of human-level machine intelligence by 2040. That's 15 years away, 16, and a 90% probability by 2075. And I believe that given what happened in the past year, how much development we have seen, there is a probability that these options will develop even faster, that everything will happen even faster. And that is my starting point today. If we assume that everything is possible technically, that machines, that AI can at least reach human cognitive capabilities, then what do we have to conclude? So let's assume for a moment a perfect AI world, a world without technical restrictions that requires a little bit of imagination, but I'd like to invite you to follow me for just 2 minutes. In such a perfect AI world, all legal work could be done by machines, by technology. From the decision to take legal action, from the design of the legal action, and to its implementation, everything could be done by machines. And this would indeed create a legal paradise, because in such a legal paradise, in such a situation, if we really delegate all the work to machines, then we can lean back, have cocktails, and let the machines do all the work for us. How would such a paradise look like? Again, this requires some imagination, but I think I will explain in a minute why this is required, why we need to think about this idea. Would it look like this? Probably not, because what we see here is humans who are involved with these VR devices. A legal paradise would probably rather look like this, because we could really step back and let machines do everything for us. And we, as lawyers, could do what we want. For example, we could engage in rock climbing or any other things that we want, while the machines are doing the work for us. Why is this important? Why is this important? Why is this kind of future vision important? It's important because even if for the time being there are technical limitations, we need to acknowledge that with each stage of new technological development and with each delegation of legal work to machines, of taking advantage of those technological developments, we are getting closer to that legal paradise that I have just tried to describe. And the question is what that means. What do we need to consider each time when delegating legal work and other work to AI systems and other technologies? So what I will do in the following is try to highlight key issues which I believe are important in this regard. I will try to highlight the advantages and the disadvantages of delegating legal work to AI. And you will see that a lot of these aspects of these issues, which are raised during the current discussion, about which we can read in the newspapers almost every day, relate to the technical feasibility. They relate to the question if we can delegate legal work to machines, and if and how we can address involved risks. But again, acknowledging these risks and those limitations, that is important, but we cannot stop here, because we must assume or we should at least assume that at one point these technical issues can be addressed, at least to the extent that systems are in a position to do what we are doing at the moment as human lawyers. And this is something which needs to be thought through. So let's start with the advantages of AI, and that is, I think, pretty straightforward. Once AI or legal technologies reach the level of human cognitive abilities, AI will develop further because it's training itself. It will be faster, more precise, more consistent in legal decision making, and more efficient than human lawyers can ever be. And remember, it's the whole idea of AI to train itself and develop itself further. So once that level is reached, it will go faster and faster and faster and develop in a way that no human can ever will ever be able to catch up. It's generally acknowledged that digital legal decision making can contribute to improving access to legal information, possibly reducing the duration of judicial proceedings, and to enhancing access to justice in general. So these are major advantages, apart from, of course, the advantages arising out of daily legal work that lawyers perform. So why not delegating legal work to machines if this is possible? What are the downsides? I think we can categorize these downsides into two groups. The first group concerns technical concerns, and the other group concerns other concerns. I will discuss technical concerns first. These are based on the acknowledgement, of course, that we are at present times not able to build perfect AI systems which allow us that legal paradise that I have tried to highlight earlier. We are reading a lot about hallucinations, that is situations when we give a question to an AI system and the answer is simply made up, sometimes even with footnotes, all looks perfect, but is of course all fake. And that is really a problem. In fact, according to a Stanford study, which these issues need to be addressed. You see some numbers here, 200,000 legal inquiries, and the hallucination rate was 69 to 88%. We know, however, also of other studies or tests. I know of one test that was done by an international law firm in the area of labor law. 80 questions were given to an AI system, and they all came back in a perfect way so that they could be used without any changes. Cybersecurity, system manipulation. There is a lot of information out there and warnings about cyber attacks, online fraud almost daily. Again, computer engineers are working to prevent these, and legal actors are also taking action by way of building governance systems and liability systems. Fake news, misinformation. This can also affect the legal work when information about law, legal structures, law enforcement, firms, individuals, cases are spread and they are fake. In the last instance, this can disrupt confidence in the legal system, and we need to again find technical tools to deal with this, to prevent this, and we need to establish governance systems and liability systems to respond when this is discovered, which is difficult enough, as we know from the daily news. Fairness and accountability have been identified as an issue. the dynamic interaction of algorithm, this quote says, with big data and its ability to make biased and discriminatory decisions without the corresponding duty of explanation represents a new chapter in the algorithmic challenge. No legal region today is equipped to deal with complex machine learning decision systems. And yes, again, this is a problem. If the algorithm entails biases or is based on biased data, then this will lead to biased decisions, to discrimination. But again, it appears to be an issue of building a proper system that can prevent these problems. And if this is not yet possible, it's an issue of governance and liability. And let's not forget that human legal decisions are also often biased. AI systems have, I believe, the greater potential to overcome these issues when the underlying algorithm and the data that are fed into the system are designed properly and filtered properly. I think a system is better prepared, a technical system is better prepared to deal with this if properly designed than human beings are. Many commentators are concerned with the black box system. When using AI, we know which data go in, which data are fed into the system, and we know what the outcome is. But the concern is that we don't really know how the decision is made. And we can therefore not explain how a decision has been generated. And that is, of course, unsatisfactory in the legal process to support the legal process. But we need to ask ourselves again, is this different from human legal decision making? Do we know what's going on in the heads of judges, of arbitrators? Is it not more realistic to assume that software engineers, AI engineers, will in due course be able to build systems which allow for this kind of transparency that is required and explicability, rather than psychologists becoming able to explain what is happening in the legal brain. In other words, it's easier in my eyes to explain automated technical processes than how we as humans are functioning. Next, due process. Commentators have argued that digital legal decision-making may deprive individuals and institutionally enshrined rights to due process by failing to provide them with any or adequate notice or decisions, a proper opportunity to be heard, or meaningful judicial review. With due respect, there's first no real evidence that this concern is valid in a scenario where technical challenges can be overcome. And this is, of course, the starting point of my talk. In contrast, digital legal decision-making should improve the protection of procedural rights and other values, I believe. As I've mentioned, compared with human legal decision-making, digital legal decision-making would be faster as well as more accurate, consistent, efficient, and all this will hopefully then ensure due process by eliminating all those human errors about which we all know all too well. So it's all about designing a proper system. It all comes down to this. Some commentators insist that making decisions via machine learning can distort the values inherent to the task at hand by granting undue weight to quantified considerations at the expense of unquantified ones. Algorithms have the potential to distort the values underlying laws and policies that in principle society has collectively determined as fair. Again, I believe the risk described here does genuinely exist. However, if digital legal decision-making can reach at least the level of human legal decision-making, and that is what AI experts tell us will happen in 15 years and 20 years and 30 years. If that's the case, then it must be concluded that such risk is not bigger than when human lawyers are in charge. And in this regard, I think we also need to acknowledge that the reference to quantified considerations is probably misleading. It's correct that digital decision-making is based on data, on information fed into the system, collected and processed by the AI system, but that is not much different from human legal decision-making, except that machines are better equipped to process data, in particular large amounts of data, and machines are therefore, I believe, in a much better position to make accurate decisions, provided that the underlying that the system is properly designed. That's always the premise. So if we can overcome all those errors, if the machine is designed properly, then all this should not be a major problem. Finally, malicious AI. You have here a quote about a famous case when Microsoft introduced an AI-based chat robot that was in 2016. They had to remove it only within 16 hours. Within 16 hours, it was supposed to become increasingly smarter as it interacted with humans. Instead, it quickly became an evil, Hitler-loving, Holocaust-denying, incestual, sex-promoting, Bush did 9/11 proclaiming chatterbox. And the commentator here says this system was not better than a kitchen paper, absorbing and being shaped by the nasty messages sent to it. Just last week, a similar thing happened, a similar incident happened. An international logistics company had introduced a chat bot for interactions with clients, and within a short time, the system started to use foul language and had to be shut down as well. So that happened. But things could get even worse, of course. When the system runs out of control, terrible things could happen. The system could destroy financial systems, educate chainsaw murderers, instruct terrorists to attack, launch attack itself, for example, by pressing the button to fire rockets, and. So this could really be a problem. Some AI experts regard these problems as a matter, again, of just building a proper technical design. This is probably true if you can find the proper design. After all, AI is merely a tool that we as humans control and run. We are the ones who have free will, and it is up to us to direct plots of the AI story. Other important voices are, of course, much less optimistic. Stephen Hawkins, the late Stephen Hawkins, for example. They even regard AI as the ultimate threat to human existence. In fact, since it is the very idea of AI to be cognitively independent, the possibility that AI will run out of control appears real, although of course not in the perfect AI world, which I have assumed for purposes of this talk. Now, to sum up on the technical side, technology is not there yet. We are at the moment, it's quite obvious, not able to delegate major parts of legal work to machines, and there are real problems that need to be addressed. But I believe that we can safely assume that these technical problems will come under control, will be addressed, and it will be possible over the next 10 years, 20 years, to delegate more and more work to AI systems and to use other legal technologies to conduct legal work. So that AI will at least be able to perform legal work at the level of human lawyers, and with the same potential for errors, of course. One last slide before, one last thought before leaving the technical side of things. Everybody is, of course, talking about governance at the moment. And again, there are many articles that you can read almost daily about how systems should be established to govern and to respond and. But governance is, of course, it is important, but it is, of course, only the second best option. It would be much better to avoid all the problems that I've just tried to outline, and there are others, of course, out there in the first place. And maybe, only maybe, it is therefore important to focus on the training of lawyers, of computer engineers, rather than on lawyers who build all those beautiful governance systems. Okay, now let's assume that those AI experts are correct and that it will be possible to build AI systems which can address the concerns that I've tried to highlight so far. And if this is the case, then we need to ask why we should not delegate work to machines. Why should we not enjoy the famous legal paradise? Are there any downsides other than those technical issues and risks which cannot be addressed by our engineers? This is what I'm going to discuss in the remaining 10 to 15 minutes. First, data privacy. What drives both automated systems and AI is the same thing that drives businesses: data. Automated systems collate data, AI systems understand them. The perfect AI world is therefore only possible if the system has complete access to data. And that means if we want to have that legal paradise, data privacy has to go. And this is serious, of course. We need to consider if we want to sacrifice data privacy for the sake of an effective and an efficient AI system that can do the work for us. Or do we prefer not to go to the beaches, not to have our cocktails, not to do rock climbing, but do the hard work ourselves and maintain our data privacy? This is a question that needs to be asked and that must be answered. You have two quotes here. They relate to the argument that AI will be a job killer. AI is predicted to put 300 million US and Eurozone jobs on the line, but could spark a productivity boom that would rise annually global gross domestic product by 7% over a 10-year period. For lawyers, it's predicted that artificial intelligence will halve the numbers working in law within 30 years. That was a quote from 2021, and maybe now with the developments last year, the predictions would be even more drastic. Now, the fact that AI is a job killer is, of course, an argument against using technology in the legal field, but let's admit it, it's a very selfish one. It's the whole point, of course, of furthermore of technological development, that it takes over the work from us as humans and facilitates our work. And this is, of course, also nothing new. It has happened many times in the history of mankind. It has never stopped the use of new devices, new systems, new approaches, new appliances, and. So it's probably better to debate how to use commercially valuable technology appropriately than to curse their arrival, Thornhill in 2023. Elon Musk, by the way, has even stated in a talk when talking to the British Prime Minister that we must anticipate a society in which no jobs are needed. I'll leave it to you to think about this statement and from whom it comes, of course. Now, many critics of the delegation of legal decision-making to AI systems and other technologies have argued that this will deprive legal work of human elements, and this is something which is not acceptable. Ultimately, law is a human system. Yes, the practice of law involves data and logic flows in ways that may not have been apparent to our legal forebears, but ultimately, legal systems add the most value when they serve humans. Across the economy, there is strong market demand for people with skills, awareness, and passion to make systems work better for humans. And I personally believe that the legal profession will not be an exception field in 2021. I must admit that I do not find these arguments very convincing. But first of all, when we talk about human elements, we need to ask what elements, which human elements are needed in legal work. Emotions, hesitation, errors, delays, doubts, tears. What is wrong, I think, with digital legal world, which is technocratic and dispassionate, but leads to correct outcomes of the legal decision-making process. And even if we believe that these human factors, whatever they are needed, we need to consider that it's the whole point of AI systems that they replicate human behavior. And I believe there's no reason to assume that AI systems should not be able to bring exactly this to the stage, what I've just described, those human elements, passion, behavior, whatever you want. Digital legal work will also herald the end of legal creativity. Now, legal creativity is something is often seen as a core skill of good lawyers, but we need to acknowledge that that whole term is very glamorous and nobody really knows what it actually means and what it is about. It's normally used in relation to legal reasoning, to lawyering, and other legal work. Now, as far as legal creativity is concerned, in the context of legal reasoning, I believe that the use of creativity is barred anyway by the rule of law concept. This is because creativity implies different options, and to argue with Dworkin, in legal processes, there is, in my eyes, only one correct outcome or one best outcome amongst different options, and therefore legal creativity doesn't really have a place in legal reasoning. There's only a better or a worse, a good or a bad argument. When it comes to lawyering, creative law, and legal institution making, we need to acknowledge, I believe, that AI is based on automation. Legal decisions made by machines are results of an automated process. They are automated. The results are automatically generated based on the available information and data. And again, the system will generate the correct outcome or the best amongst different options. And therefore, again, I believe that there will not be any room for creativity. Next, democratic legitimization. Do AI systems, do platforms which are used to run those AI systems act without democratic legitimizations? For example, like corporate entities. My colleague Professor Uta Kohl is working on a fascinating research project that explores related questions in great detail. For me, for now, I believe we can say that there may in fact be an element or a lack of democracy if we give everything, of course, to machines. Is this a problem for legal work? For all legal work? Probably not. If you think about work done for clients, how much democracy is needed there, I'm not too sure. Things, of course, may be different when we are talking about judicial work or we talk about lawmaking. Here, if that kind of work is delegated to machines, then this may be a real issue. And again, it's an issue of designing a proper system which is able to address this problem. And with this, I'm coming to the main argument, to the main point, which I believe is the key question in this whole discussion about whether we should and we delegate legal work to machine. The most important argument. What is the main feature of human existence? Now we're getting really deep into philosophy and other, the whole sense of human being. The main feature of human existence is that humans make major decisions themselves. And this is Socrates, of course, and it's Western liberalism. If we delegate legal work or legal work to machines, then we infantilize ourselves, we dehumanize legal work, and in fact, we dehumanize society. And I think we all agree that we do not want this, and we consequently cannot accept that machines are allowed to take over completely. And this leads to a dilemma. On the one hand, the use of AI for legal work can generate major advantages, not least, as I've tried to outline earlier, in terms of achieving justice. On the other hand, delegating all or major parts of major portions of legal decision-making, legal work to machines means that we are making ourselves redundant, not just as lawyers, but as human beings. And again, I trust that nobody wants this. Now, to zoom in on this question, which I think we must answer, let's consider two scenarios. Scenario one. In scenario one, AI is used as a tool to draft legal documents, negotiate legal documents, structure deals, enforce the law, support legal education and training, and so on. So in this scenario one, AI supports legal work, supports the legal system. And I think we are all happy with this. In scenario two, AI allocates wealth and goods, comprehensively organizes person-to-person relationships, prevents breaches and eliminates the needs for sanctions, eliminates the need for private legal arrangements, takes over human law teaching, does everything, takes over, does everything. That's the legal paradise that I've mentioned earlier. AI makes law and human legal work redundant, and we have, in fact, the legal paradise. The question of the century is how much we can and how much we want to move from scenario one to scenario two. Again, I think rejecting technology is not an option, given all the major advantages which I have outlined before. But how far do we really want to go? How far can we go? And the question, of course, also is, once we start delegating, if we reach a certain point, is there a point of no return? we also need to acknowledge that, of course, the parameters are shifting because new technologies are being developed at a rapid pace, and as a result, more and more options are becoming available and are being used actually, because it's not that the law tech, the legal tech firms and the law firms, and that each time that these devices are being used, that they ask for permission. So it's a constant development. But the more legal work we delegate to machines, the more we are giving up our position as decision makers, and we need to be aware of this. We are giving up what defines our existence as lawyers and as human beings for the sake of speed, precision, consistency, and efficiency in legal work. We may even say that we are giving up our existence as humans for the sake of better and ultimately perfect legal work, thus creating, again, my famous legal paradise. And the question is, do we want this? The end game of designing systems that reflect justice and equity will involve very considerable interdisciplinary efforts and is likely to prove a defining policy issue of our time. This is a quote from 2017, and it's becoming more and more clearer and clearer that this is really the question we need to ask over the next decade. I will stop here. Thank you all for listening. If you want to read more about the famous legal paradise, where you can have your cocktails and you can engage in rock climbing and all these wonderful things, here's a quote of my article. I hope you will enjoy it. And I want to mention again, this is only an article. The book written by Professor Gallagher is, of course, much more comprehensive and addresses many of the topics and many of the features that I have mentioned today. Thank you very much. Over to you again, Steve.
Thank you very much, Lutz, and thank you very much for promoting my book so much as well. That was nice plugs for the book. Well, we have a number of questions on a number of the interesting issues that you raised there. I thought your point about algorithms and AI being dispassionate, because there were a number of commentators who pointed out that many people view that lawyers aren't very humane at times, and they're quite dispassionate, and actually that artificial intelligence would fit very well with their view of lawyers. But of course, as I think we're mostly lawyers here today, we probably feel differently. We do think there's humanity in the law. So let me start with a question that sort of follows on from that. What do you think ideas like equity and justice would look like from the perspective of an AI?
Thank you. This question, I guess, would lead us into a 3-hour discussion of the position of equity nowadays in the context of the rule of law let me say that I believe that equity is not outside the whole rule of law framework, and I've discussed this with many colleagues. It was probably in times when the Chancellor's foot was the determining factor here, but those days are over, and all those systems and frameworks and the whole development of equity, I believe, had only one purpose, and that is to make sure that the outcome of the application of equitable principles is foreseeable, is predictable, and with this it is in line with the rule of law. And with this, I believe it is nothing very similar from what we see in the common law in other elements. AI will therefore do exactly the same. AI will take into account past cases, facts, opinions. If AI has access to all these data, to all the information, then this will be part of the system. And I think the system will then generate automated results That's what I believe the rule of law requires, because the rule of law requires predictability of any feature that determines the legal process and will eventually lead to the correct result. I'll stop here. I know you're an equity lawyer and you feel a little bit uncomfortable with this, but in the end, I hope you will agree.
Well, I would worry a little. I understand what you're saying about the rule of law and a little bit of predictability, but of course, the whole problem was that the common law, that's why equity was developed, because of that problem with this. And you have the rules and the rules don't always work. And that's the problem. I think you already said it with AI. You know, the issue of it can't create. It doesn't create anything. It generates based upon the information that it's been trained with. So,
sure, but AI will take into account equity as a judge would. That's my point. And I don't think there will be any problem for AI to act like a judge. And that's the prediction, because AI will know as much as a well-trained lawyer will know.
Right. Okay. I think we've got some follow-ons from that. We've got a question about from one of our former students here, who's asking, if one day AI becomes a perfect tool, does that mean that whoever has a monopoly on AI technology will have the privilege to justice?
That's a very good question. It's something I have only mentioned on the side. There's a lot of discussion whether or not the big tech firms, those who design AI systems, those who control AI systems, whether they will have a major advantage and they will be able to dominate the world. I think this is a real risk. I think Naomi Klein just published an article on that in the Financial Times. I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, and it's a real risk. And I agree that must be addressed. It's again a matter of designing a system which can counter that risk, can deal with that risk, or with designing a system which can react to the risk if it materializes.
Okay, we're sort of immediately following on from that. We've got, is the future that the richest litigant who can afford the best AI system will inevitably win?
Well, let me first say, is it correct that at the moment the litigant who can afford the best lawyer will always win? I think there is a risk, and I think the risk, if an AI system is in charge, I think the risk is much smaller than compared with what we see, what we have at the moment. But again, I must say, this is all an issue of designing a proper system, and we need to imagine that perfect system for the sake of determining how we want to move forward. I think this is important. That's why my article carries the title "A Necessary Legal Thought Experiment," because we are moving towards that direction. We are not there yet, but with each step we need to decide whether we want this and what the consequences are.
Yes, and it also raises another analogy, doesn't it? Because the most expensive lawyer isn't necessarily the best. So you do wonder about these AI systems as well, don't you? You're obviously, we're getting some questions coming in. You're obviously provoking a reaction with a few people. Do you think that if we delegate more and more work to AI, there will be a point at which we lose control and we cannot get it back?
Again, this is a risk, I think, that is real. That machine, it's the whole idea of AI, that it educates itself, that it takes over, that it becomes independent cognitively. And if we train AI too much, if we feed too much information into the system, if we allow AI to move on without control, I think that risk is real, and we have to be aware of that risk, and we need to, again, be able to react and decide how far do we want to go. And let me add one point here. The difficulty that I have to just try to describe earlier is that, of course, it's not that the whole world is moving together. You have different countries, different law firms, different areas, and everybody is doing just something, and it's moving faster and faster and faster, and we are not coordinating here. But this problem is not just the problem of one country or one court or one law firm, it's the problem of the whole world. And that is something which is a bit worrying, because like in those science fiction movies, if AI really takes over, then, you know, we are done. We've lost control.
But actually, now we come on to a much more important question, I'm afraid, even than that one, which is, do you think that legal education can also be taken over by artificial intelligence?
Great question. My short answer is yes. Will this happen? It will take some time. Let's consider what kind of advantages AI-based legal education would have and what the downsides are. They're pretty much like what I've described earlier. But when you think about it, AI would be able to teach in a very individualized manner. The whole point of teaching, of student-centered learning, is that you cater to students' needs. And we as law teachers always teach to the lowest common denominator, simply because if you have a class of 100 students, you can't adjust your teaching method, your teaching approach, your level of difficulty to each of the students in the classroom. You have to find a common denominator. AI would be able to do that. AI can individualize teaching based on the data that students provide, on information about students. Students would then sit there with their goggles, with their VR glasses or devices, and AI would design whatever the student needs. A classroom with other teachers, with other students, a classroom with a teacher, without a teacher, a library environment where the student sits alone, a student who learns on the beaches. It would be a perfect learning environment. So that is possible, and I believe it could come. Are there any downsides? I think in this regard, the same aspects that I've tried to highlight earlier will apply. What about the human elements? AI can replicate human elements, so I don't think it's a real issue. We even have to ask whether we need law teaching in the future. If we have a legal paradise, then the system would do everything on its own. And we've just heard that in 30 years, we will need half of the lawyers that we have at the moment. So what about in 60 years? What about in 100 years? There are lots of questions involved here. Technically, I think it's easier to offer AI law teaching. You know, you can think about avatar teachers. You can think about classrooms where you have classmates sitting next to you. If you wear those VR devices, then everything is possible. And I'm not sure really about the downsides.
Thank you. Well, the downside, it definitely sounds to me, not needing any law teachers anymore. That sounds like most. But we've got a sort of linked in, but actually this is about before that. Before we get to that stage of AI taking over in the teaching, the questions come up about, with the current use of AI, should we rethink how we actually assess the rankings of law schools? The points being made is this: if students' use of AI for accessible coursework remains restricted, but there are no such restrictions upon legal research by academic staff, does this mean that the career performance of students should be the best measure for the ranking of law students rather than professors' academic output?
Great question. As we know, with the emergence of generative AI last year, this is all a moving target. And I must admit, I don't really have answers to this yet. I don't think that, I must say, I'm not a great believer in these rankings anyway, because the criteria that are being used are a bit fishy, and I don't really like them. But what makes a great law school? Is it just the students, or is it the research output of colleagues? I think it's both. And I don't think that research, at least at the moment, is generated by artificial intelligence. I think, as far as I know from my colleagues at least, our research is still generated by us. We are not using AI tools to come up with innovative ideas. I think AI is not there yet, but it may be in the future, and it may also be that in 100 years and 200 years, when we have a comprehensive legal system which is completely operated by AI, that we don't need legal research any longer because that's done by AI.
Okay, thank you. I think probably the most important factor in law schools should be the law teaching more than anything else on all of these things. But I'm afraid we've run out of time. We have got more questions. And again, I think you sort of, well, as they say, rattled some people's cages with some of the things you said, because there are a couple of interesting questions there that maybe we'll pass on to you later on afterwards. But we've run out of time tonight. So thank you very much, Professor Wolff, for your very thought-provoking seminar tonight.